Hey everybody, Jim the Tabletop Engineer here, and welcome to a new episode. I have just started a new project for my patrons on Patreon where I am making a 30-inch by 30-inch diorama. This will be my second one, and it is a fantasy-based one. And the idea is that it's a fixed diorama, meaning everything is going to be glued down so that I can take this, put it up on a shelf or out of the way, and when I'm ready to play a game, I can grab one of them, put it on the table, and it's ready to go. No terrain setup necessary. Now, I did one a while back, and this second one is going to be called The Crypt of Vaniel. I have been working on it, just started on it with my patrons. It's a live crafting session that I do at least once a week. I've been doing it twice a week, and my patrons join me, and they watch as I, make this thing. One of the objects that I need to make a lot of them. I need to make 5 of them, and it's an archway. So what I did was I made the archway in the live crafting session, and I was so pleased with how it turned out because it could serve as a piece of terrain all by itself, just something you could slap on the table. So I decided to go ahead, and since I need to make 4 more, there will be a total of 5 of these on my diorama. I decided to go ahead and just film making one and sharing it as a video because some people may not want to watch the whole diorama set of videos. They may not want to become a patron of mine. So I thought, the least I could do was just film this part. So in this video, I'm going to take you to the work table in a minute. I'm going to show you how to make this. Now it's got a thin line that runs around the top and in the middle of the columns there, and you can paint that whatever color you want. But for me, I'm using the Treasure Gold from Folk Art, and this one is called Purple Topaz. I am so loving these Treasure Gold paints from Plaid. So I decided to go ahead and use another one with this, and I'm hoping this Topaz Violet is going to look good when this thing is done. So let's get to the work table, and I'll show you real quick how I made this, and then you'll be able to make as many as you like to. Now, I created this project using my Proxxon, but you could use a blade. The Proxxon makes some of these cuts easier, but with a blade, you can cut a lot of the rounded shapes and things like that. So you start out by cutting 6 pieces. Each one of them is 4 inches tall, 1.5 inches wide, and you're using 1/2 inch foam. These will form the columns. Now, there are 3 of these per column. You're going to sort of make a sandwich. Now, you don't have to do this part, but I did. I trimmed off 1/8 inch off of the inside and outside of the column. And then the inner piece, which is sort of the sandwich, in the middle of the sandwich, I trimmed it 1/8 inch short, so it's not as thick or wide. So that when you make this little 3-piece column, the center is going to be sort of inset. Glue it together, and in just a second you'll see what I'm talking about. So I glue the shorter piece, or the not so thick piece, in the middle, and then I glue the outside piece of the column on. And if you look carefully, you'll see there's an inset here. It's just a visually pleasing way to create a column. After you create the columns, you're going to want to cut some, I don't know what they're called, grout lines, stone lines. It's just, to make the pillars look like, or make the columns look like they're made out of pieces of stone. So I just made marks to divide the columns up into thirds, and I used my Proxxon to burn a real thin line all the way around. And you do this on just the outside pieces, not the inside. It's too difficult to get the wire down in there, but here you can see the wire line goes all the way around. Now, to get the line down in the centerpiece, I just used a blade. I just cut those alternating so that they're offset from the other lines, and I used a ballpoint pen to just widen the line and give it some depth. Next, you'll want to use a piece of aluminum to rough up all of the outside edges, including the corners. You don't want any sharp points or sharp edges because this is supposed to look like an ancient archway. Next, you're going to want to cut 4 pieces that will make the top and the bottom of the column. These are 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch, and they are using 1/4 inch thick foam. Rough them up with aluminum and then glue one on top and one on bottom. Try to keep them square and centered, the column portion centered on these bases if you can. When you're done, set those columns aside. We're going to work on the archway now. I created 3 different templates out of chipboard. The first one is a 3 1/4 inch radius. So use a compass to create a chipboard semicircle. You'll tape it onto the foam using like painter's tape, something that's easily removed. And then with a Proxxon, I just traced around and I let the cardboard or the chipboard be my guide. Now, if you don't have a Proxxon, you can just cut these by hand, cut them by hand with a blade. But the Proxxon's just something I like to use for tracing like this. So you're going to cut 2 at the 3 1/4 inch radius, and then you're going to cut 1 piece 3 1/8. This is going to create a slightly smaller archway that will go sandwiched between the 2 larger pieces. You only need 1 of these. And again, I just taped it down onto a piece of chipboard. This is all 1/2 inch chipboard, by the way.
Each month, Bexham's Bazaar RPG and Wargaming magazine provides gamers with articles, props to print and cut out for players, mini adventures, new monsters, and much more. Look in the description below for details on how to get a few free issues so you can see what you're missing.
Now, with these 3 pieces, I made one final arch that's 2 inches radius or 4 inches in diameter, and I tape it in the center point of each of these semicircles. And I'm just making the mark where the center is. Then I tape that piece of chipboard down, and I have a halfway mark on it as well so I can center everything. And then I used my Proxxon to cut out the arch, so it leaves behind an arch. So there are 2 large pieces and 1 slightly smaller piece. Not that small, but you'll be able to visibly see that it's smaller. Do not throw away these 2 inch diameter waist pieces. You're going to need one in a minute. So after I cut those 3 pieces, what you want to do is, again, trim 1/8 inch off of the width of the front and back arch. Just make them thinner. Don't do this to the center one at all. So here I am cutting just 1/8 of an inch off. Then I take the back one, I put a bead of glue on the smaller one, and I stick it to that. And I just use the bottoms of the arches to sort of square things up. Then I'm going to take some more hot glue and run it over the smaller piece, and then take the larger archway, which would be, I guess, here the front, and I will sandwich it, squeeze them together, make sure they're level. Next, take that 2 inch waist piece that you cut out. You only need 1 of these. Use a compass to just trace a semicircle out. I think it was 1.5 inches is what I used. And then cut it out with a blade or a Proxxon, and it leaves just this tiny little archway that's going to be glued in the center there. So take some hot glue, run it around that little tiny piece, and it's going to be glued up in there. Now, before you do this, you're going to want to cut the lines to make the stone. You're going to do this on the little piece and the big arches as well. You can eyeball this. You can get as scientific as you want. Take measurements and degrees and find out where to make it. I just visibly looked and tried to make the lines look good. So there I am gluing that center piece in. And next I'm going to take my blade and I'm just going to go all the way around, and I'm going to make the marks where I want to make the stone lines. I used a pen to sort of deepen them. All right, so make the lines on the larger arch pieces, and again, use a pen to just deepen them a little bit. Then take a piece of aluminum and rough up the both sides and the top and the bottom as best you can. Now you can glue the archway to the columns, and you want to make the ends of the archway line up flush with the columns walls, not that top 1 1/4 inch square. Once the glue is cooled, paint the entire thing black. I only had to give it 1 paint. I used Folk Art acrylic black. it is a very good paint in that it only typically requires one coat. Usually with pink foam, I have some pink showing through with any kind of black that I use, but I have not had that issue with a well-shaken bottle of the Folk Art a black acrylic from Plaid. I just did one coat and that was it. Now when that black coat dries, you're going to dry brush everything with a light gray. You don't have to get the rings, the strips that are between or sandwiched between the bigger pieces, but you're going to get them painted accidentally. It doesn't matter. You're going to paint over them later with a color. So dry brush everything with a light gray. Then you're going to want to get a white, any kind of white, a cream, but bright white works just as fine. And you're going to want to dry brush everything less with white. Give it maybe 80% coverage with the dry brushing of the gray, and then maybe go 30-40% with the white. Just be very, very stingy with the white. You don't want to go crazy. And make sure that brush is really, really dry. Continue to brush it even though it looks like there's no more paint on it. Brush it on the back of your hand just to get a little extra off. You can always add more later, but it's hard to take off any extra white that you add. When you're satisfied with the stonework, and by that I mean the gray and the white, then you need to decide if you want to paint the ring over the top of the archway that goes in the middle, and the space between the two columns. I chose this paint called Purple Topaz. It is part of the Treasure Gold series from Plaid. I've used it in another diorama, and I just love this metallic. Now this is a different color. I've never used this one before. So I put it on there, and this one I gave 2 coats. One coat was enough, but I could see a little patchiness, so I just went back and added a second coat to it, and it looks great. And so here it is. I'll spin it around for you and show you. One Ancient Archway ready for your table. It can be used as scatter terrain. I'll be using a total of 5 of these in my next diorama. Okay, there you go. Again, it's just I like it. It's a great looking archway. If you're not making a diorama like what I am, this is just a piece of scatter terrain, something to just set in rubble or ruins or a dungeon entrance. And it's tall enough that any tall mini, any large creature could easily fit through it. Again, the color scheme, make it whatever color you want. You don't even have to paint in there. It could just be stone. But for accent purposes, I wanted to bring in a color, and I think this is going to be the one I choose. All right, that's it for this video. I would like to remind you that if you want more of this kind of thing, please come check out patreon.com/thetabletop-engineer. I will put this link and information below. For just $1 a month, you can become a patron of mine. You'll get early access to all my videos before they hit YouTube, usually weeks or even a month or more in advance. You will get access to my live crafting sessions. I also have a new Sunday night painting, mini painting live session where you just come and join and we all paint together and chat, and it's really fun. I give away PDFs. I have giveaway contests, all kinds of stuff. $1 a month. And that supports me because this is what I'm doing full time now. So for my existing patrons, as always, thank you for being a patron of mine and supporting me and allowing me to make more videos and more crafts to share with you. Now, I'd like to please invite you to come join me at the Tabletop Engineer Facebook page. I'd also like to invite you to come join me and my other fellow 5 guild masters over at the Tabletop Crafters Guild. We are over 35,000 members strong. It is a great place to come and post pictures of your crafts. You can ask questions. You can provide answers. We have contests. It's a really great hangout place for people like us who like to make terrain for their tabletop games. All right, that's it. This is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. I will see you in the next episode. Take care.